Andrew Broad is the Nationals MP for the Mallee in Victoria. Good morning, Andrew.
G'day, Chris, and it's good to be back at Parliament once again for 2015.
Okay, the Human Rights Commission is calling for a royal commission into children held in immigration detention. Would you support a royal commission?
Look, I don't know. I'm always reluctant to support royal commissions because they cost a lot of money. But there's no doubt that we needed to have some changes in the policies. We had basically no people in detention. We went through the 7 years of Labor. We had up to 2,000 children in detention. We've now stopped the boats and we've now very much minimised the amount of children that are in detention, now under 200. I myself has been very interested in this issue. We have a very compassionate electorate, people who want to see strong border protection but also see a compassionate response, and they're quite happy that we've made a lot of changes.
So the boats have stopped. Is it time for all children to be released from immigration detention?
Well, I think it's a combination. At the end of the day, you need to ensure that children are staying with their families as much as possible. So my understanding of the children that are there now is they've come with families. There are, processes you need to go through as assessing the security risk of the parents or the father in the family predominantly, and we want to keep those families together. So it's not as simple as just to say, well, we just move children out. We have to keep that family unit together and also look at how that can be assisted.
But if the test is what's best for the child, this report from the Human Rights Commission details all sorts of assaults, sexual assaults, psychological stress, etc., etc. So doesn't that suggest what's best for the child, essentially in every case, is to move them out of detention, even if that means moving the entire family unit out?
Well, look, I think what the report does is give and I haven't read through the report, but I'm told the time frame of the report begins at the start of January 2013. So this is going through the end of the worst period of management on border security under the Labor Party, and now trying to then look at some of the clean-up job that the Liberal and National Party inherited, trying to make it better. So I think we all know there was a terrible situation. Finding that balance, though, between keeping families together and looking after the welfare of that child if it's in an unpleasant and unhospitable area needs to be looked at. I think our Minister, Peter Dutton, is a very compassionate man. He's probably going to be focusing on these areas very well. But it needs to be said that there is no perfect policy when it comes to dealing with desperate people who are trying to better their lives.
Isn't the problem with this sort of issue that is, if you don't have a full and open inquiry like a Royal Commission, the issue just festers away and can fester away for years? It's the sort of thing that we've seen in the Royal Commission into sexual abuse of children. Isn't it better, you say, essentially the era of child detention appears to be coming to an end, so isn't it better just to clear the air, get it out in the open? Well,
look, I won't make a judgment call on that. I'll leave that up to the executive government as to whether they think that's the right process to go
but you're
forward.
An MP, you must have an opinion.
Well, I do have an opinion, and I have an opinion that it's an imperfect policy dealing with desperate people, but what we've seen is a terrible situation where you had people dying at sea, where you had thousands of children in detention. You've seen our government come in and clean it up, essentially stop the boats, and now remove children out of detention. And I might add, something that's been very popular in my electorate, is giving people who are in limbo on those bridging visas who weren't able to work, we're giving them hope. We're going to let them work. We're going to have a pathway to citizenship, and we're actually increasing our refugee intake. And so it's quite funny when you see people trying to blame the coalition and say that their policy is cruel and harsh, because actually their policy has resulted in better outcomes and better standards for people who are in desperate situations.
Let's move on to a couple of other issues. The South Australian Labor Premier, Jay Weatherill, is proposing to investigate the possibility of establishing a nuclear power industry in Australia. What's your views on that?
Well, my view is it's a debate we need to have in a mature way in Australia. We've always been competitive in the world because our wages have been high.
So it's worth investigating.
It's worth investigating, yep. So we've always been competitive at producing things in the world. Our wages have been high, but our electricity has been cheap. Now, we have a double standard at the moment where we are a significant exporter of uranium. I went over to the United Arab Emirates and looked at the nuclear power station that's getting built there that is using Australian uranium. So we say we're happy to export it, but we don't want to use it here. So that's a double standard. If you think it's bad and it's bad for the world, then we shouldn't export it. Or if you think it's good, then it could be something we should consider. So I'm not saying that yes, we should build one straight away, but it is something that we need to look at because it ultimately is the most reliable, low emission baseload power source.
Now, your electorate is irrigation is very important there. It's on the Murray River at Mildura, amongst other towns.
Yep.
We had Senator John Madigan on the program this week. He wants an inquiry into the Murray-Darling Basin plan. He thinks it's skewed too far towards the environment. Would you like to see the plan revisited?
I'm nervous about opening it up, I've got to say. The first thing is, do we need a plan for the Murray-Darling Basin? Yes, we do. Was the plan that was developed too skewed to the environment? Yes, it was. How we achieve the plan that was negotiated through the Parliament that also looks at good river health and maintains profitability for irrigators can be achieved in two ways. We can achieve it by taking water off irrigation and sending it down the river, or we can use infrastructure builds, so capital works, to do good environmental outcomes. We've got great examples of that. In my electorate, we've got the Hatter Lakes, where we've actually put really significant pumps to pump water out of the river and water a wetland. It's a Ramsar listed wetland, then that water is then reused back to do other environmental works. So it all depends on how it's implemented. I'm not confident that it's going to be implemented well yet, and it's something I'm going to be taking a very close eye in.
But you think it's what, maybe too early to revisit the plan? It should be given a little bit more time to be finessed, if you like?
Yeah, I do. And I think what John Madigan's doing is to be commended. He's going out there and listening, because when you see good reform with water communities, it's when you take the people with you on the journey. When you have try and achieve things with a bureaucratic front based in Canberra, I think that doesn't work. I am quite comfortable and quite happy with the appointment of the new chair of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, Neil Andrew. I had dinner with him last week. He's an impressive guy. He's got his head screwed on about how to achieve this. I have also made it very clear that I think more staff from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority should be living in river communities. And I think Mildura, and this is a bit of self-interest because I elect the area, but it is where the Murray and the Darling intersect. And ultimately, those who manage public assets should be able to look out the window and see the assets they're managing. Just
finally, a win, I guess, for the Nationals, with the government announcing new foreign investment limits on agricultural land, cumulative 15 million. Is this a process that's kind of half done, though, that the land register is the second half, and that should be brought in as soon as possible?
Well, this is something we need to get right. You can go to one of my country towns, if you are a foreigner. You cannot buy a house, but under current legislation you can walk out the back paddock and buy a farm for $240 million without having to tick any boxes. Now, we want young Australian farmers to be able to buy the farm and not have to compete with sovereign wealth funds from China, from the US, from the United Arab Emirates. We want to sell our food, not our property. And what we're simply saying is, if a property is going to be purchased by a foreign company or a foreign individual over the value of $15 million, we want the right to be able to determine whether it's in Australia's national interest or not. And I think it will be an immensely popular policy by people out there in rural Australia.
Now, this policy, though, doesn't stop foreigners buying land over that value. It simply means that the Foreign Investment Review Board looks at it to see, as you say, whether it's in the national interest. How in the hell do they determine if one purchase somewhere in Australia is in the national interest? How do they actually do that as a matter of practice?
Well, this comes back to we need to well resource and broaden the skill set of the Foreign Investment Review Board. But at the end of the day, is it in the national interest or not is simple enough to determine. Now, I've got an example in my electorate. I'm a rural electorate, and we've got this Hassard group who have bought 100,000 acres north of Nil in Tilapia Downs. They came in there, they cleared country that was dubious as to whether they were pushing the perimeter environmentally to clear it, and they'd be lucky to buy, one roll of fencing wire in the local store. So the town has just missed out on that whole 100 acres of, stimulatory activity, and that's really the determining factor. Is foreign investment an investment? Is it going to create more jobs for Australians? Is it going to create more wealth for Australians and do something that's innovative with that land? Or are they simply going to buy it, take the capital growth on that, and take their product straight overseas and try and avoid tax? And I think that's the difference.
Okay, Andrew Broad, thanks for your time.
Thank you.